Hello everyone, so today I'm going to be talking about literacy in English language arts in edTPA. And so just to start off a little bit, everybody knows sometimes literacy and ELA go hand in hand, but it also goes in hand with a lot of other subjects. And so we're going to be looking at how literacy works in the edTPA and what source could be used to demonstrate how we are providing literacy in ELA, what we are doing such as activities, and why we are doing them. And one of the sources that I looked at was 10 Things Every Writer Needs to Know by Jeff Anderson. And so we're just gonna dive on in. So we're gonna start with some of the rubrics of the edTPA that relate to literacy. So we have rubric 1, which is planning for English language arts understanding. And so that's basically our lesson plans. How are we planning to meet those goals for students, to get them to understand the concepts in English language arts, and so forth? So in order to get a level 4, and it's actually level 4 plus, a candidate explains how they use learning tasks and materials to lead students to clear and consistent connections to the text. And then another thing to think about is that your standards and learning objectives and your materials must be aligned. So going into that kind of means like the standards that you are putting as the California standards for ELA, and they should line up with what your goal is to teach the students and what activities or materials you're using to get them there. So for instance, if one of my standards is, thinking off the top of my head if I can remember any standards, demonstrate like using correct citations. That's not word for word standard, but how would we teach students how to use citations, which ones to pick, how would you use the quotations in the citation to demonstrate that these are not your words, they are the author's words, and you're just taking this idea and applying it to what you want the reader to see in your own writing. And then we have rubric 4, which is identifying and supporting language demands. So some language demands could be to analyze, or, well, that's kind of like a language function as well. And so level 4 and up, instructional supports are designed to meet the needs of students with different levels of language learning. And so to me that kind of means, how are you differentiating to meet students where they are at, to where they will be at the same level or near the same level as every other student within the class, and get to the point to where they understand what they need to in order to demonstrate that they have learned this skill. And so another thing that kind of goes into this rubric as well is the challenge. You never want to just set the bar so low that your advanced students in your class are bored, they're disengaged, they will goof off in class because they feel like they have nothing else to do. So it's also, how are you challenging those students to go above the language demands? Are you asking them to maybe dive a little deeper in an analysis, or take something a little bit complex, like find another resource that applies to their writing and add that in as a challenge as well? And so that's kind of where I see rubric 4 as, like, what are you doing to get those students where they need to be? What are you doing to challenge those students that are already there? And we also have rubric 14, which is analyzing students' language use and English language arts learning. So level 4 and up, This candidate explains and provides evidence of language use and content learning for students with varied needs. So, explain and provide evidence. Some evidence might be a sample writing or something that was modeled in class or things like that. How learning for students with varied needs. So that could be students with IEP, students with 504, struggling students. What are we doing to help them? Are we giving them extra materials, sentence frames, things like that to help them meet that literacy that they need to be at? And then going on from there, we're going to dive into how 10 things every writer needs to know relates to the edTPA. So in chapter 2, Jeff Anderson mentions that models should be implemented in the teaching of writing. And I 100% agree. It also relates back to the edTPA because picking a model and deciding what to model are a part of planning. So this is something that I had to think about a lot when I was planning as well. What did I think I would need to model for my students so that the expectations are clear and they understand what they are supposed to be doing. And it's also, what questions do I need to ask when modeling to get them thinking, not just doing the work for them. And then it also helps because you're able to use academic language and provide support for language demands. So using the vocabulary in the model that you want them to incorporate into their writing to demonstrate that they are grasping this vocabulary, and also making sure that we're hitting those corrections and using those words in the correct context. And it also provides an example of language used for students to look back to as they begin writing. So for a model or sample writing, students could look back to it, think, okay, did I make this citation correctly or do it correctly, sorry? Did I incorporate the page number of the article or the novel or the author's name, all those things that need to be added to demonstrate that these are someone else's thoughts and not their own. And in chapter 3, he says to provide a focus and goal. And he says that writing can be overwhelming when just dived into, so providing a focus and or topic is a way to support students, and that's students with varied needs as well. You are basically providing them with something to focus on as they're writing, such as, and that goes a lot into thinking about a thesis, which is also a focus of your paper. And yeah, that also relates to the edTPA because you're making it very, very clear and stating that this is what you're writing about and showing students that that will be the focus of their assessment or assignment. So the edTPA also wants to see what activities are being matched with the standards and objectives we are teaching, which is very true. So as going back to rubric 1, which is about basically planning, and then thinking about how your standards and objectives and your activities can match up. And it's also thinking about planning backwards, which I know is a Gallagher deeper reading thing, but it also applies to everything. And then just going back to Anderson, he provides activities that can be done for students to practice and develop skills. We are teaching them, and those skills are matched with the standards and objectives of the unit. A student's writing process can show how we worked with the students to meet certain demands and corrected vocabulary usage. There needs to be correction and opportunities provided for students to meet their goals. We can't just go through and, oh yeah, they completed it, they're good. We actually have to go through, make those corrections, make sure the vocabulary use is correct, the grammar use, making sure they're hitting that goal that we set for them. Did they use their focus throughout their paper? Did it actually match up? What they were saying, did it match their focus of their paper? And then student writing is also a way to analyze student language use and ELA learning. So there are different skills that are learned throughout ELA, such as developing a thesis, analyzing, or explaining. And so we can use assessments as a way to analyze a student's progress. And these are just some questions that I think about when I'm analyzing some student work, like what is being seen in their writing that relates to the text. Are they going back and reflecting and using things from the text to explain what they mean? Are they using citations correctly, such as are the quotation marks in the right place? Did they put the page number? Did they put the author's name? Do they have a lead into the quote and not just the quote's just in the middle of the paper and there's no explanation or anything that led up to that? Does their writing contain vocabulary words addressed in the unit? So there's always some form of vocabulary instruction. Are they using those words in the paper correctly? Are they demonstrating that they understand? Is it clear that they understood the assignment overall? And I think that's something that we need to really focus on in the edTPA, as in, are we providing enough instruction to where students understand the assignment? Not so much like overkill to where it's drilled into their brains, but yeah, that's my take on literacy in ELA and the edTPA.